Hey adventurers, so today is going to be my spoiler discussion on The Rings of Power Episode 5, and I still haven't gotten the title for that one, but that's alright. I don't need the title really doesn't matter that much. As always, I'll just go through my thoughts that I wrote down as I was watching the episode. I've actually got a lot of them in this one, and I don't really have a whole lot else to say. My overall thoughts, I guess, are that I enjoyed the episode as an episode, and that I didn't enjoy it as a Tolkien fan because it messed with lore a whole lot more than really any of the other episodes have up until this point. That being said, it was a fun episode for me to watch. Like, I enjoyed, I guess, the spectacle of it. Just watching it as an episode of a TV show, I had fun watching this one. So, starting right off, unlikely that the hobbits would know the difference between a hill troll and a cave troll. So there's actually a nice scene right at the very beginning where Nori and the stranger are talking, and the stranger, not understanding language, understanding Hobbit language, Westron, the common tongue, is trying to communicate with Nori, and Nori is talking about perils and dangers and all these kinds of things and everything, and she mentions that there's hill trolls and there's cave trolls and all that kind of stuff. And it just stood out to me that she mentioned both hill trolls and cave trolls, because I don't really feel like the hobbits would understand the difference between them. Maybe they would, I don't know. I feel like she should have just said trolls, because there's all sorts of different trolls, and they're all trolls, and they're all bigger, way bigger than the hobbits. I feel like she should have just said trolls there. Okay, then, so this story, the Harfoot storyline in this one is really about their migration. And again, the time that it takes for people to travel in this show is not good. Like, they don't understand that, clearly, because the hobbits travel halfway across Middle-earth in this one episode. I mean, I understand that in the last episode they weren't in it at all, and so, like, I understand a little bit of why they did it. They had to show some time passing for them, but the time that passes for the hobbits, the amount of time that it would have taken the hobbits to get to where they're at the end of this episode versus the time that it happened for everybody else, all the other storylines, doesn't make sense. It's not the same amount of time. So, yeah. Then we get to, so we follow them, more or less follow their course through Middle-earth, down along the Anduin, and then they cut across above the Emyn Muil and come down into what in the Third Age would become known as the Dead Marshes. At the time they have it called the Grey Marshes, and they come through it. And I'm not sure why they come through it rather than going around it. It doesn't make sense to me why they would not go around it when they could, and it would probably be faster for them to go around it. Plus, they don't have to hide from anybody, or they don't have to hide from Mordor. That's the reason why Frodo and Sam and Gollum took the path through the Dead Marshes in The Lord of the Rings, is because of the fact that they were trying to get to Mordor without being caught. They don't need to do this. The Harfeet don't need to do that. Harfoots, hobbits, whatever. The hobbits don't need to do this in their trail because they're not trying to hide from Mordor or not get spotted by Mordor. So whatever. I'm not sure why they decided to go through the marshes. This is the episode where we get this Wandering Day, which is a song that I've talked about in I believe my Positives of the Rings of Power that came out right before the show aired, and I was talking about the soundtrack and how this Wandering Day is a very good song. I still agree with that. I still think it's a great song. Okay, so then we get a scene. It's actually kind of an interesting scene with Adar standing out in the sunlight, taking in the sunlight, because we know he's an elf, and that he's enjoying the sunlight while he can. And so he talks to an orc and everything. But what I noticed specifically in this episode was that the orc's clothing, and I noticed it in earlier episodes, but I never commented on it. But it looks like reptile hide of some sort, which makes me wonder, where are they getting reptiles that are this big that they can make clothing out of? Because, I mean, the scales are about that big, round. And so they're big, clearly big reptiles that they're finding. I don't know if they're finding snakes, if they're finding lizards of some sort, or if they're finding dragons maybe. But whatever the case, it's just an interesting decision to make them have like a reptile hide clothing. I still don't like Bronwyn. So there's a scene where she goes and gives a speech. I don't like her speech. I don't like Bronwyn's character. I don't like the speech that she gives. And then Waldreg, I think is his name, is one of the other Southlander characters. He comes and gives his version of the speech of, no, we should go bow down to Adar, or to Sauron, because he thinks it's Sauron, and swear fealty to him so that we can survive. And Bronwyn's like, no, we should stay and fight. Forced conflict here. But the speeches were also not powerful. They were neither speech or argument is particularly convincing. That's what I have written down. And it's true. Like, I didn't buy either of them. I was like, well, I mean, I'd choose to stay with Bronwyn because Bronwyn has Arondir with him, and Arondir's an awesome elf, so gotta stay with that. But also, I'm a good guy. I stick with the light. I don't go... Anyways, the point of this is that neither of the two speeches or arguments was convincing in the least. But there is one cool thing, because I think this is the first time I've seen this, but there's a scene transition from the Southlands to Numenor, and it's a particularly good scene transition because it really shows the difference between the two. It contrasts the two, the grimy dirtiness of the Southlands and the lack of ability, lack of technology, lack of order. And then you transition, it's actually a jump cut, but it just switches to Numenor, and you see these beautiful not waterfalls, but you see like this technology, these water wheels doing things, powering things, and it looks great, and it really just shows the difference between the two, and it's really impressive. The stark contrast between the high-tech civilization of Numenor and the barely scraping by of the other humans is very noticeable. That's what I had written down. Okay, so then so in the last episode, Isildur got himself kicked out of the Sea Guard, and then so in this episode he's going and talking to his dad. He's like, come on, I gotta go, I got to be on this party that goes with Miriel and protects Miriel and everything. And he's like, no, you have no skills, you have not proved yourself worthy to do this, and so I'm not gonna let you do it because you're just throwing everything that I've taught you in my face, and all this kind of stuff. And the conversation between the two of them is very strong, poignant conversation, and it works, and it feels like a father and son, who the father loves his son, but he is also disappointed in his son at the moment, and I really like that. Okay, so they talk about, we have 5 ships and we're going to take 500 people to Numenor. The ships don't look big enough for 100 people, especially for that long of a voyage. So at the end of the episode we see the rest of this going on, and the ships still don't look big enough to hold 100 people. Maybe I don't know ship stuff enough, which is probably true, but they still don't look big enough to hold 100 people each. So then we go back to the Hobbit storyline, and I just made this comment: what forest are the hobbits in? I had a very hard time tracking where the hobbits were at. It almost feels like they're in Ithilien at one point, but not really, because the forest is a different type of forest than what I think of when I think of Ithilien. So I mean, it could just be a difference in my mind versus their mind, the creators' minds. So it might still be Ithilien. I don't know. I'm not sure where they're at. And then we go back to Numenor. So what I have written here is, I don't care. The scene where Galadriel trains the Numenorians is awesome. When listening to the soundtrack and I heard Scherzo for violin and swords, I didn't know how it could fit into the show, but I specifically remember thinking it sounded like a piece for a training sequence. But also, seeing a well-trained, agile, skilled elf fighting was very good. It felt a bit clunky at times, but it was still nice to see some competency out of the characters other than just Galadriel. So I'll touch on the Scherzo for violin and swords thing real quick. So that's one of the pieces of soundtrack that's in this episode, and I listened to it and I was like, I really like this piece of music, and I didn't know how it was going to fit into the story, like I mentioned. And throughout it I was like, this really sounds like a training sequence of some sort, but who would she be training with? Who would be training, really? And then it comes on and I'm like, oh, this is gonna be it. And it was great. I like training sequences. I like when somebody who's very skilled is working with somebody who's clearly significantly less skilled, not necessarily incompetent, but far less skilled. And seeing the difference between them and seeing the highly skilled character just do a whole bunch of stuff, it's fun for me. I enjoy that. I did mention it felt a bit clunky. So yeah, it felt a bit clunky at times. There was a lot of movements that Galadriel made that felt, they did them to make her seem very elven, very quick, very agile and stuff like that. But because she just seems so human, I didn't buy it. And that's a fault of the filmmakers for not making Galadriel seem more ethereal, for not making her seem more elf-like. And that's alright. It's just a little bit of clunkiness in that. It was still a cool scene and a fun scene. Not necessarily great, but it was, for me, I enjoyed watching that scene. I took joy from that scene. Because I like fight training sequences. They're fun. Okay, then Halbrand flicks up a sword that was laying on the ground and catches it and does some cool stuff with it, a sword play with it. And Galadriel walks up and says, "Never known a smith's aide that could do that." And that line felt so false, because Galadriel is an elf. Galadriel has worked with and talked to and met tons and tons of elven smiths. and she seriously has never met a smith's aide who could also wield a sword, I don't buy it. The elves were all, pretty much all the elves were warriors, because they had to be. And so to see her be like, I never known a smith's aide that could do that, it just felt so false. And again, the showrunners, the writers did not think that through. How would this come across to an elf who's literally older than the moon and has seen and met tons and tons of people in her life, and she has never met a smith's aide who was also a warrior? I don't buy it. It doesn't ring true to me. I guess I should also say, since I wrote it down, that not to mention that they're elves and can do that kind of things, that kind of stuff pretty naturally. That's the type of things that the elves do naturally. They're very light on their feet, they're very quick, they're very agile, all that kind of stuff. I still really like Farazan. I think Farazan is a great character, and I can't wait to see how because we're seeing the seeds of it. We're seeing just a little bit of it starting to peek through, especially with his conversation with his made-up son. And the sequence where he's talking, you really get to feel that this character has a plan. He is thinking about something. He knows what's going on. And you can see the seeds of this character that we know from the books in this character that we see from the show. That seems very reasonable, and it's very cool. He's probably one of the best. The writing for him is probably some of the best, because you see where he's going to end up, but he still seems very reasonable. Okay, then we go back to Linden, and there's a conversation between Elrond and Gil-galad, and they talk about this ancient myth that they should both know. Well, Elrond not necessarily, but Gil-galad would know more or less if it's true. I feel like, whatever. Anyways, they have a conversation, and it sounds like it's Elrond recounts this tale that they say is apocryphal at best. I'm not sure that I like specifically that wording, but I'll let it slide because I understand what they're trying to get at by it. So the story that they're telling is about how there's this tree that was rumored to contain or to hold one of the three lost Silmarils or something like that. And on one side there's a Balrog, and on the other side is an elf, and the two of them are fighting, and the darkness of the Balrog versus the lightness of the elf is fighting against it, and then the lightning strikes the tree. So anyways, it sounds like a reference to Glorfindel, but the tree is a new thing. As a story/myth, it works. As an origin for Mithril, I don't like it. So I'll quickly touch on this thing that it sounds like a reference to Glorfindel. So they're specifically talking about it being on the top of a mountain, at the peak of some mountain, and there's a elf on one side and a Balrog on the other. So we know that the story of Glorfindel is that I believe it's coming through the, what's the realm? Gondolin. They're coming through the mountains of Gondolin, I believe is what it is, and a Balrog attacks them. Them being Glorfindel and a bunch of other elves. So Glorfindel attacks, this Balrog attacks them, and I may have my locations wrong, but I believe that's where it's at, which means it's in Beleriand, which is the continent that's sunk already. So the story already, location-wise, if it's a reference to Glorfindel, doesn't make sense. But so Glorfindel and the Balrog fight. Glorfindel completely owns the Balrog, but they both end up falling off a cliff. Glorfindel is then sent back into Middle-earth. His soul, spirit, whatever it is reincarnated and sent back to Middle-earth. I don't know what timeline that is. Whatever the case, that doesn't matter. But so it sounds like this story between this super high elf lord and this Balrog fighting. That's what it sounds like a reference to. Again, the tree is new. I don't remember a tree being there. I don't remember anything about any of this stuff, and it doesn't work as an origin for Mithril. I also don't like that Mithril contains the light of a Silmaril. So they are trying to, and they've answered now the question of why do we need this forge completed by spring? And it's not because they need the forge completed by spring, it's because they need the Mithril by spring, or else all the elves are gonna die or something like that, which, no, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Plus, wouldn't the other elves, like Arondir, notice this by now? I don't understand. Wouldn't Galadriel notice this by now? There's all these types of things that just don't make sense. And I also don't like that Mithril contains the light of the Silmarils. No, it doesn't. Mithril is just a metal. It's just an ore that is very, very hard, that's only found in Moria, possibly found in Numenor, but that's debatable. We don't know if it's actually found on Numenor, or if the king that really liked Mithril just got some from Middle-earth, from Moria, and used it in in Numenor. That part is never decided, but it's possible that there was some mithril on Numenor as well. And it never has contained the light of the Silmarils in the past. It just reflects, and it reflects light very nicely, very easily, very quickly, very strongly, and it's a beautiful ore. Whatever the case, I don't like that whole storyline as a myth, as like there's this myth of a Balrog and a elf striving against each other with a tree in between them, and the tree being saturated in the two things. Like, that's kind of a cool myth story, myth idea, but it doesn't feel like Tolkien, and it doesn't feel real, and it definitely does not make sense with the lore of Mithril. I'll get past that. That's really where you see it and you're like, oh my goodness, this is a departure from the lore. Anyways, we'll get back past that now. I'm very, very happy to see Elrond holds oaths as serious as he does. So there's, in the last episode, he swore an oath to Durin with his hand on the stone of the mountain, basically saying, this oath will stand as long as this mountain stands. And that mountain's gonna stand for a long time because it's a mountain. And the power of an oath is something that Tolkien held very important and that I hold very important. And so seeing Elrond also hold this as one of the most important things he could ever do is swear an oath to somebody. And now it comes to I either have to break my oath or watch my entire race fade away and die. It doesn't really work, again, with the whole elves thing. But still, I appreciate seeing the oath being taken so seriously by Elrond. We go back to Numenor. There's what is it? Valandil, I think, or something like that. So there's Isildur and his two friends. One of them's name is Ontamo, and in this episode, at least, his performance was not the greatest. I don't know if this is the directing, I don't know if this is the acting, I don't know if this is the writing of the character, but whatever it is, the performance of the character, it feels very weird. He's supposed to be kind of drunk at this point, but still, it's not just during this scene where he's supposedly drunk, it's throughout all of the episode, and it feels really weird. His facial expressions, I don't like it. I don't know if that's the character or the actor or the director. Like I said, I don't know what is the cause of that, but whatever it is, I didn't like it. Okay, yeah, back to the elves thing again, because they went and had more conversation about this. Their motivation for wanting mithril seems weird. They say to saturate every elf in the light of the Valar. Maybe, but that seems weird to me. Again, so there's several things about this. Wanting to saturate all the elves in the light of the Valar, that in and of itself seems weird, because the elves, a lot of the elves never saw the light of the Valar as it was. They never went to Valinor, they never saw the two trees, they never saw any of this stuff. Most of them never saw a Silmaril either, which captured the light. A lot of them haven't even met Galadriel, whose hair is supposedly captures the light of the two trees. So this idea of them needing to saturate every elf in the light of the Valar doesn't work. Also, going back to the mithril, that the mithril contains this light of the Valar doesn't work. It doesn't make sense. Oh wow, I'm almost to the end of my thoughts. Alright, so I think it's somewhere in this area. We go back to the hobbits real quick, and so there's the stranger scares away. Before this, the stranger has scared away a bunch of three wolves or wargs. They look like, I don't know, I assume they're supposed to be wargs, but the stranger scares him away by doing a big power blast and slapping his arm on the ground. His arm is then all bruised and nasty looking. So in this scene that we're at now, he's stuck his hand in a pool of water, and it's, yeah, I don't like wherever they're at, because it's if it truly is Ithilien, it does not make sense for there to be the stone ruins that there are. There's a lot about this that doesn't work and it doesn't make sense. Whatever the case, going back to this specific scene, he has his arm stuck in a pool, and it's like he's chanting some incantation in another language, and you see frost start to creep up onto his arm and everything. So Nori's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And then she touches him for some stupid reason. Right there, right where this frost is, and then her hand freezes, and then she gets all freaked out, and after the spell is complete, she goes flying back because it's another energy burst, and now she's scared of the stranger. It felt very contrived. Anyways, let's see, what did I write down? I think it's somewhere around here. The stranger freezes his arm and Nori touches it, then gets scared after she was stupid. Very much forced drama. So they did this as a way to make Nori no longer trust the stranger, no longer be sure that he's a good guy, all that kind of stuff. It doesn't make sense Nori isn't that stupid of a character to, well, one, to touch somebody's arm as it's freezing. Maybe she is, but it again, it didn't feel natural. It didn't feel like something that she would do. But then also let's see, what is it? Her then being scared of the stranger for accidentally hurting. He didn't accidentally hurt her. She wasn't even supposed to be there. So it was her fault for getting hurt in the first place. And now she's scared of the stranger. It doesn't work. It doesn't work, guys. We go back to Numenor and we see Halbrand sweeping. What he's sweeping, I have no idea, because the dirt on the ground is not even getting swept up because the broom is garbage. There's so few bristles on the broom that it's just dragging over the top of the dirt and not actually getting the dirt out of. Just fix the broom. Make it an actual broom. It's not that hard. So what I have is, what an utterly garbage broom. Do better. That's what I have written down for that one. Then we jump back over to Lindon real quick. We see only 6 elves to carry a slab of stone. Elves are strong, but that strong? So this is the massive stone table that Durin, I like Durin, I still like Durin, and anyways. He convinces Gil-galad that they should give the stone back to the dwarves. And so they do. Gil-galad's like, alright. And so this scene is 6, I believe it's only 6 elves, there might be 8, but I believe there's only 6 elves carrying this massive, it's probably like a 20-foot long chunk of stone, about that thick, about 6 to 8 inches thick, another probably 6 foot wide. And so, like, this is a massive chunk of stone, and I don't buy that 6 elves would be carrying it. Yeah, I just don't buy it. Okay, one of the best portrayals in this show is the friendship between Elrond and Durin. What I have written is the true friendship between Elrond and Durin is nice to see. It's very, very nice to see when two people have an actual true friendship, and this is one of the best. I mean, this is one of the major themes in Tolkien's works. In Lord of the Rings, you have the friendship of Frodo and Sam, getting them to Mount Doom. It's their friendship, it's Sam's respect for his master Frodo. It's all that stuff, but then you also see it with Legolas and Gimli and Aragorn as well. And then you see it with Aragorn and the other leader of the Dunedain, and with so many of the characters have these deep, deep friendships, and you see them and you believe them, because they seem so real, and it's very nice to see a friendship in this show that's as strong as those, and that's the friendship between Elrond and Durin. Then we get to the final sequence of this show is Numenor leaving Numenor. So one of the things that we see is Elendil in full battle armor, and he's got his helmet, and he's got the wings on his helmet like he's supposed to. And that just made me very happy, because I love that helmet. It's so strange looking, but I love it so much, and I missed it they did have it a little bit, but I missed it in Lord of the Rings and how it was supposed to look in those movies. So I'm very happy. We also get to meet Lord Halbrand, and I really like Lord Halbrand. I like his charisma, his energy. I like the way that he just takes on the role and is like, you know what? I'm Lord Halbrand now, and I like it. I still don't know. I don't think he's going to be Sauron. I'm kind of leaning away from Sauron at this point. But I do think that he's going to be either a Nazgul, probably of the Nazgul, most likely the Witch King. But my theory, and this isn't my theory alone, I saw this from somebody else, is that he will be the King of the Dead. And but whatever the case, I still like him at this point. I like this Lord Halbrand. Armored Galadriel, so this is the scene from the trailers where she walks up onto the boat with the sun shining behind her and CGI and everything like that, and I like it. I didn't hate it as much as I thought I would. It's very slow-mo, it's unnecessary slow-mo. There's a lot of stuff about it that's unnecessary, but I liked it. Armored Galadriel I actually like as well. So that is my thoughts throughout this entire episode. Good things, bad things. As an episode of a TV show, I enjoyed watching this. As a Tolkien fan, I'm a little bit frustrated with the lack of accuracy to the lore. I knew that was coming. I fully expected it. I didn't expect something so blatant and so strange of a change. So those are my thoughts on The Rings of Power Episode 5. Thank you guys for watching an Erudite Adventure. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know what you guys' thoughts on this show are. I'm seeing a lot of people who are very frustrated with this show, a lot of Tolkien creators, Men of the West, stuff like that. Anyways, I'm seeing a lot of them who are frustrated with this episode because of how much it breaks the lore. I get that, but I want to know, did you enjoy this episode as an episode of a TV show, or could you not get past the lore breaks? Again, as I mentioned, I don't love the lore breaks. I understand that they're going to be there. I don't love them, and I don't have to want them to be there or enjoy them or anything like that. But as an episode of a TV show, I really enjoyed this one, and I had a lot of fun with it. So let me know what you guys thought about this. Anyways, thanks for watching. Stay warm.